Welcome to soccer season, where for the next month, during the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, we're going to be looking at soccer-related cinema from around the world.
Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. It is now.
Every day a game is played, I'll be reviewing a film from a country playing that day, or at least try to, as there will be a few outliers. Today, in your land, take on an adversary they've never beaten, the USA, and face the wrath of Captain America, Christian Pulisic. Right in the 90s! The first time these two teams met, it was one of the biggest sporting upsets in history.
I've always said if you're old enough, you're good enough.
Where USA won 1-0 against England, the favorites for the tournament.
That was liquid football.
This is for all of those who wish to boycott the World Cup this year and remind them that
football is life.
You can still enjoy the World Cup without watching. So sit back and discover and appreciate some new movies that showcase the beautiful game, to supplement each match, or simply just to watch on their own. This is soccer season, and it's about to kick off. So yeah, we're going to be talking about a game of their lives, about the 1950 USA World Cup team. I know it stars Gerard Butler and Wes Bentley, but that's about it. I'm not going in with great expectations, considering some people have said this is terrible. It's got 26% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't great, but it's also got 6.1 on IMDb, which also isn't great, but it's not bad either, so let's go. Alright. So we follow the lives of a group of guys from St. Louis, Missouri, who are supposedly the best in the whole country. This includes Gerard Butler. And they have a scout who comes over who suggests that they should try out for the US men's national team. And they'll play a game to decide who gets picked against a team from Pennsylvania, the home of Captain America himself, Christian Pulisic. While this happens, we go through some of their personal lives. One of them is about to get married and doesn't want to go as a result, so that's a huge calamity. And then, the father-in-law, he decides, I'm gonna push forward the wedding so you can go. And there's a whole, adoptive father dynamic thing where he calls him dad, and he looks like he's about to tear up. It's all just typical biopic character building that's a bit lazy, and despite about half of the film being set in St. Louis, Gerard Butler and much of the rest of the cast inexplicably sound like New Yorkers.
You and me, we played together forever.
They've even got that actor who played Joey's twin, Carl, in Friends.
How are you doing?
And Patrick Stewart plays the only US reporter who was there at the 1950 World Cup, telling the story retrospectively, which, again, it just feels like a bit of a lazy way of telling the story. And this guy's asking a question, he's like, would you have thought that 55 years later the game would be so much more advanced than it was then? What was US football doing in 2005? I don't think David Beckham had even moved there yet. And that was really what put the MLS on the map. It's still not where it probably should be, but, things might improve in the next 20 or so years, especially with that Apple deal that they drew up. Patrick Stewart's journalist is really the only cast member who's actually trying to do a Southern accent. Everyone else sounds like from fucking Queens.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
Hey, I'm from St. Louis, born and bred. Get out of here! It's just a typical, vaguely inspirational underdog story that's been told many times, and better as well. There's plenty of obligatory, needless slow motion shots. Though one of the characters, who I guess is the grandfather or whatever of one of the main cast, he did make a great point about how he should really be proud to represent his country, and that
you don't need fancy equipment or special fields. You don't have to be big or strong or tall. It's the most democratic of all sports.
But he did also say that it was the people's game, which gradually is becoming less and less truthful. It is funny hearing that, especially given where it's being held currently. I don't think that's very much the case anymore. It's also rather amusing how when they meet up in New York to train before they go off to Brazil, Wes Bentley's character informs that everyone of their itinerary, and they're like, nah, we're going to go out and party or whatever. And he's like, look, you've got practice at 9 a.m. in the morning, we need you there. We've only got a few days to prepare or whatever, and then they're going to have an exhibition game against England. And then they're like, oh, we're going to go out anyway. And then one of the St. Louis players says,
I don't like taking orders from a crowd.
Now, I get this was 1950, and World War II had ended very recently, it was 1950, and that quite a few of the players were veterans. But Wes Bentley's character responds and says that he is of German descent, but first and foremost, he is a Seppo. He didn't actually say that, obviously. He said American, but I hate when people from the US use a demonym for the entire continent. No other country does this. I do find it amusing that they're of Italian descent, but they don't seem to quite put together that they weren't part of Mussolini's fascist Italy. And so he probably wasn't part of Hitler's Nazi Germany. You know, Italy was part of the Axis powers in World War II. They fought alongside the fucking Germans.
USA! 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 USA!
It's also really funny that Stanley Mortensen is portrayed as this really obnoxious, stuck-up posh boy.
We come from cricket. It suits our national character better.
When he was from the northeast, near Durham. That's the best accent you're going to get from me, from that part of England. There's probably people from, like, Durham, Newcastle and Sunderland going, he's butchering our fucking accents. Anyway, there was a rather uncanny moment in the scene where they finally have the match in Belo Horizonte against England. And the British commentator, I was like, hang on, that voice sounds familiar. I realised it's Phil Vickery. No, wait, Phil Vickery's the chef, isn't he? Sorry, Tim Vickery, the South American correspondent for the BBC. He's been doing it for years. But yeah, he has a very distinctive voice. I was like, I'll recognise that voice from anywhere. And, you know, the whole thing of them winning and... there are a lot of historical liberties taken. And also, I don't know why they portray it as if this was the only game that they played the entire thing, because it misses out the loss that they have against Spain. I don't necessarily think this is worth a watch necessarily. It is quite mediocre. But if you want to watch an inspirational sports film on a Sunday afternoon or something, then it's inoffensive enough, but there isn't a whole amount of football in it, and it is very derivative. But hey, it's alright. And the score is one of the most cookie cutter, just cut and paste. Hey, you want something that seems hopeful or whatever? Yeah, sure, there you go. It's not a very memorable score.
I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10.
So all in all, nothing to write home about, but I guess it does the job. I'd like to see the story being told in a much more inventive way. I mean, the USA at the time, they were total amateurs. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. Like, completely non-professional, and they managed to beat England, who were the favourites for the competition, along with Brazil, who were stunned in the final themselves by Uruguay. I think in better hands, a better director, certainly. This is just so uninspired. It could have been something really worth watching. I mean, if they'd got Clint Eastwood to do it, for example, I think it might have been a better film. So those are my thoughts on The Game of Their Lives. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments if you've seen it, and if you haven't, you're not missing much. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can also follow me on Letterboxd for more of my thoughts on films. See you all very soon. Bye bye. It says here the King of Beers, and I think that's false advertising. Budweiser, the official sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2022 in Qatar. Please note, this is not available for purchase anywhere in any of the stadiums.